At 6 o'clock in the morning, Olivia was awakened by her baby's cry. Her husband, who should have been sleeping beside her, was nowhere to be seen. Working through the night again, she muttered to herself as she crawled out of bed in the master bedroom of their luxury apartment. The sunrise, visible from the top floor along Lexington Avenue, heralded the beginning of a new day. "Mama is here," Olivia approached the crib, calling her daughter's name. 6-month-old Emma seemed to be crying because she needed a diaper change. She efficiently changed the diaper and gave her milk while gazing out the gradually brightening window. She organized today's schedule as a curator at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in her mind. Preparation for the French Impressionists special exhibition was reaching its critical phase. While making coffee in the kitchen, she opened her laptop to check her emails. Several urgent messages from the museum. Her husband's email from last night simply read, "Late meeting, Mrs. Montgomery. I'm terribly sorry, but I won't be able to come in today." Olivia let out a deep sigh at the babysitter's message about being under the weather and quickly reached for her smartphone. She needed to find a replacement sitter. These past 6 months, balancing childcare and work had been like walking a tightrope. Then, a call from her mother. She had a bad feeling about this. When she answered, sure enough, her mother Helen's imperious voice rang out. Her mother, who should have been enjoying an elegant morning in her luxury apartment along Park Avenue, always seemed to call early in the morning for some reason. "Olivia, I told you yesterday too, you're doing everything wrong with the child care. Leaving things to a babysitter? Really? In my day, and I'm concerned about Emma's clothes too. She's my granddaughter, you know. Shouldn't she be wearing more designer brands? Mom, I have work. Why don't you just quit your job? James's income is more than enough. More importantly, what are we doing about the baby shower preparations? All my acquaintances are looking forward to it. I've made reservations at the Carol." Olivia closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Her mother called at least 3 times a day, each time with the same lecture, the same pressure. She was told not to bring the baby to charity events and to hold the baby shower on a grand scale with 100 guests for her mother's reputation. "What does James say about this?" her mother asked. At the mention of her husband's name, Olivia's chest tightened. Her husband had not been cooperative with child care at all lately. All he ever said was that he was busy with work. There were also rumors that things weren't going well with Montgomery Development's management. As Olivia was lost in thought, her sister Vanessa suddenly arrived, looking every bit the manager of a high-end boutique on Madison Avenue. She wore perfect makeup and carried the latest designer bag. "It's a new bag. Lovely, isn't it? Only sold to customers with reservations at Bergdorf's," she said while scanning the room with scrutinizing eyes. "My, how messy it gets with children around. I would never let things get like this. Look, there's even a Bonpoint dress on the floor." With that, Vanessa took out her smartphone. She would probably post something sarcastic on social media again. Olivia had already seen her sister's posts several times, saying, "Watching my sister's parenting is the perfect example of what not to do." The looks from her mother's friends who saw those posts were growing colder by the day. Looking at Emma's sleeping face, Olivia let out a deep sigh. There was no one she could talk to. Her relationships with friends were slowly being destroyed by her sister's deliberate gossip. Her husband was coming home later and later. Support from her family was nothing but a facade. But for this small life, Olivia gently stroked her daughter's head. She had to endure. Still, she had to endure. Listening to Emma's peaceful breathing, Olivia quietly wiped away her tears. These people must absolutely be invited. It concerns my reputation. Helen thrust a thick guest list in front of Olivia in the Carlyle Hotel lobby. The Metropolitan Museum trustees, the chairman of the New York City Ballet Patrons Association, and major donors to the Central Park Zoo. The names of New York society's heavyweights were densely packed on the list. They were all names Olivia didn't know. "Mom, what about my friends?" "Your friends?" Helen snorted. You mean those mommy friends from your parenting circle? The ones who enjoy brunch at Sarah Beth's? We don't need to invite such people. A baby shower is a social occasion. Since she's my granddaughter, we need to maintain a certain standard. Olivia silently sipped her tea. The elegant aroma of the Carlisle Special Blend only served to aggravate her stomach pain. Several Bergdorf Goodman baby clothing catalogs were piled on the table. I wasn't expecting a granddaughter like this. Olivia stopped at her mother's unexpected words. What about Emma? She doesn't look like me, does she? She doesn't look like you either. She's completely inherited the Montgomery blood. How should I put it, common. And your way of raising her is problematic too. Even when she wears Bonpoint, she gives off the air of a daycare child. Olivia frowned. What was her mother trying to say? The elegant afternoon tea atmosphere froze in an instant. Just then, Vanessa breezed in. Sorry I'm late. The fitting for the new Tom Ford collection took longer than expected. Her sister deliberately sat next to their mother rather than beside Olivia. Oh, discussing the baby shower. Let me join in. Her new dress from the high boutique sparkled in the afternoon light. Vanessa's ring seemed more prominent than usual. Mother, have you heard about sister's childcare situation? She's considering daycare. Can you believe it? And she seems to be leaving Emma with the babysitter constantly, using the Metropolitan exhibition preparations as an excuse. Helen's expression darkened. Daycare? How common. Why are you trying so hard to ruin my reputation? How am I supposed to explain this to my friends on Park Avenue? That's not it. It's just that my work at the Metropolitan. Why don't you quit? Her sister interjected. Even I can see that your parenting is doing the child a disservice. At this rate, it will affect Emma's future. We already need to make reservations for Briarcliff Preschool. The weekly family meeting had now become a forum for cornering Olivia. Dinner at Daniel, lunch at La Nuit, under the guise of meals at fancy restaurants. Her mother and sister's criticism was gradually spreading to those around them. Madam, regarding your daughter, we received a call from Madam Helen, a sudden call from the Lincoln Center Charity Event Committee. They wanted to withdraw Olivia's participation. The ballet patrons have expressed concerns. Madam is worried that you might be overwhelmed with child care. That was just the beginning. Her mother's social connections were extensive, and their influence was steadily eroding Olivia's surroundings. Calls from former friends ceased, and even when they ran into each other at Bloomingdale's, they would just give a perfunctory nod and walk away. Even in the church community, people were beginning to avoid Olivia. Her mother's influence was starting to extend to Emma's future. This might have affected the entrance screening at Briarcliff Preschool. You know, her mother's words were clearly a threat. One night, her husband came home unusually early. However, his expression was exhausted. Olivia, I got a call from your mother, James began reluctantly. He downed a glass of scotch in one go. She's concerned about your parenting lately. Vanessa is worried too. And about you continuing to work. Olivia was stunned. Had her husband taken her mother and sister's side too? The chilled French soup on the dining table wouldn't go down her throat. That night, after putting Emma to bed, Olivia snuck into her husband's study. The PC password was their wedding anniversary. She gasped at what was displayed on the screen, her husband's company's financial state. The deficit was more serious than expected. Her mother's manipulations for a new marriage arrangement and decisive evidence of his relationship with her sister. The emails dated back 6 months, late-night business meetings at her sister's high-end boutique, strategic management meetings just between the two of them. The next morning, her mother's call came. Don't you dare ruin my reputation at tomorrow's baby shower. Many Madison Avenue dignitaries will be there. You understand what's at stake by now, don't you? Olivia smiled quietly. Yes, don't worry. After hanging up the phone, Olivia stared at the envelope containing documents, printed bank statements, hotel security camera footage, and email records. Enough. It was time to end everything. The top floor of the Carlisle Hotel. Over 100 invited guests had already gathered in the grand ballroom overlooking the Manhattan skyline. The bubbles from premium champagne being poured into the champagne tower danced eerily in the chandelier light. Olivia let out a deep sigh in front of the mirror in the preparation room. The brand-new Ralph Lauren dress didn't quite suit her anxiously trembling body. "Miss, are you ready?" The hotel concierge knocked politely at the door. String quartet music could be heard leaking from the venue. "Yes, I'm fine," she answered. Olivia checked the contents of her clutch bag, a tightly sealed envelope, a USB drive, and Emma's photo. "What a lovely venue," her mother's voice came from behind. Helen, wrapped in a custom Oscar de la Renta dress, wore a satisfied expression. "The New York Times Society columnist is here too. It should be in tomorrow's morning paper. My parties will be the talk of the town again." Olivia nodded silently. Her mother was still only concerned about her own reputation. "Come now, don't look so gloomy. This is a special day for you and Emma." There was something malicious in the tone of those words. When she stepped into the venue, society's glamorous faces all turned toward her at once. Metropolitan Museum trustees, New York City ballet patrons, charity organization leaders, the central figures of upper society surrounded her mother. Superficial pleasantries and cold gazes lurked beneath. Olivia maintained her smile and continued her greetings. Meanwhile, a crowd had already gathered around Vanessa, her sister, dressed in a new Chanel dress. She was letting out bright peals of laughter. Every gesture seemed to declare that she was the real star. While accepting a glass from a server, Olivia searched for her husband. James was near her sister. An invisible tension hung between them. "Shall we begin the photo session?" The photographer started setting up his tripod. The family gathered in front of a pure white backdrop amidst the sound of shutters. Olivia could feel it, everything was plastered over with fake smiles. "Where is the child?" the photographer asked. Olivia cut off her mother before she could answer. "She's right here. She is my daughter after all, isn't she?" The babysitter approached carrying a sleepy Emma. A sigh escaped from the crowd at the sight of the baby in her pure white dress. "How adorable, like a little doll. She looks just like Olivia." At the last comment, her mother slightly grimaced. "Now, it's time for a toast." Helen stood in the center, champagne glass in hand. She surveyed the room with a perfect smile. "Thank you all for gathering here today for the baby shower of my beloved daughter Olivia and my dear granddaughter Emma." Olivia quietly set down her glass. "On this special day, I have an important announcement for everyone." The room fell silent. Helen wore a triumphant expression. "Actually, there have been some issues between James and Olivia." Her mother paused as if choosing her words. "After discussing as a family, we've come to a new decision. James," Olivia's heart raced, her arms tightened around Emma, "will be starting a new life with Vanessa." Olivia slowly stood up. "Yes, I understand." Olivia's quiet voice rang through the venue. "But haven't you forgotten something?" Olivia pulled out a document from her clutch bag. "Did you know that your sister's supposed fiancé was officially declared bankrupt last week?" Helen's expression stiffened. The color drained from Vanessa's face. "Montgomery Development is already insolvent. All assets are being seized, and there are suspicions of fraudulent loans." "Stop it," her mother's scream rang out. "Why isn't this a social occasion?" Olivia smiled sarcastically. "Oh yes, one more thing, Mother. Did you know Vanessa is 3 months pregnant?" The room erupted in chaos. The New York Times reporter was frantically taking notes. "The new marriage arrangement you were plotting is all water under the bridge too. The alimony from a bankrupt man wouldn't maintain the reputation of a Park Avenue madam, would it?" "Be quiet," her mother screamed. "You're ruining my—" Olivia smiled serenely. "Yes, your reputation is indeed ruined, Mother, but not my life. Gently holding Emma, Olivia surveyed the room. Everyone, I apologize for the commotion. This is my final announcement. From tomorrow, we will begin a new life, just Emma and me. With a graceful bow, Olivia left the venue behind her. Her mother's hysterical screams echoed. Her sister collapsed in tears. Reporters' camera flashes popped, and invited guests hurriedly rose from their seats. In the hallway, she took Emma from the waiting babysitter. Her daughter's sleeping face was peaceful, as if completely unaware of this turmoil. Let's go, Emma, to our new home. The next morning's New York Times Society column bore the headline, Scandal and the Distinguished Montgomery Family. Olivia quietly spread out the newspaper in a hotel room near Central Park. Emma was taking her morning nap on the bed. Second daughter of social leader Miss Helen Watson breaks engagement with bankrupt businessman. The article didn't directly mention the events at last night's baby shower, but its impact was certainly spreading. Madam, you have a phone call, the hotel staff connected the internal line. It was from the lawyer regarding last night's incident. We've been contacted by Mr. Montgomery's side. They want to settle. That won't be necessary, Olivia answered calmly but firmly. All evidence has been submitted to the prosecutors. I'll leave the rest to you. After hanging up, she received a call from her family's long-serving maid. Miss, your mother's been having hysterics since morning at the Park Avenue mansion. Her mother was said to be distraught. She had resigned from the Lincoln Center Charity Event Committee and would step down from the museum board. Her position as Queen of Society had crumbled overnight. And Miss Vanessa, her sister, had taken her personal belongings from the high-end boutique late at night and boarded a plane to Miami. Her note simply read, "This is all your fault, sister." Meanwhile, James was in the prosecutor's interrogation room. His voice reportedly trembled as he explained the details of the fraudulent loans. His formerly gentlemanly demeanor had vanished, leaving just the figure of a cowardly man. From your mother, in the afternoon, a large bouquet arrived at the hotel. Attached to the pure white calla lilies was a letter in her mother's disordered handwriting. Why did you ruin my reputation? We're family. Do you think this is right? Olivia quietly closed the letter and gently placed the bouquet in the trash. Emma had woken up and was showing an innocent smile. Mrs. Montgomery, no, Miss Watson, in the afternoon, she received a call from the Metropolitan Museum director about the French Impressionist exhibition. Your curation is excellent, please continue. Work was waiting unchanged from before. In fact, there was a deeper trust in the director's voice than before. Miss Watson, you've been through so much. In the evening, a neighborhood housewife who ran into her at the supermarket spoke kindly. Any mother would fight for her child. You did the right thing. The frozen atmosphere around her was slowly beginning to thaw. At night, after putting Emma to bed, Olivia stood by the window. The Manhattan nightscape sparkled like hope for tomorrow. Her phone rang. It was her parents' number. Olivia, her mother's voice was trembling. I was wrong. It was the first time she had heard her mother's voice so weak. It's thanks to the strength you taught me, Mother, Olivia answered quietly. I'm sorry, her mother's tearful voice echoed. If only I had cherished you and Emma more. After hanging up the phone, Olivia let out a deep sigh. She approached Emma's bed and stroked her sleeping daughter's face. The tiny life was breathing steadily. The next morning, the lawyer called about the divorce mediation schedule. Child support from James seemed unlikely, but that wasn't a problem. We found a new property, the real estate agent called. It's in a quiet residential area a little away from Lexington Avenue. The rent is lower than now, but there's a lovely park nearby. Emma, let's go to our new home, holding her daughter, Olivia smiled. Designer clothes, lavish baby showers, the glamour of high society, none of these were necessary for true happiness. In the evening, her former friends came to visit, bringing food. You've been through so much. We should have noticed earlier. Let's help each other from now on. The aroma of homemade muffins filled the hotel room. Emma gave an innocent smile to the people she hadn't seen in a while. Meanwhile, at the Park Avenue mansion, her mother sat alone, looking through an album of photos of Olivia and Vanessa when they were young. The two were smiling together. When had everything become so distorted? In Miami, Vanessa was crying in a hotel room. She had lost her position as boutique manager, been abandoned by her baby's father, and above all, was tormented by remorse toward her sister. The Montgomery development office was already deserted. James was packing his last personal items into boxes, tasting the emptiness of having lost everything. Looking at Emma's photo, he was struck for the first time by genuine regret. A week later, Olivia moved into her new home. While moving in, she heard a familiar voice. "Let me help." When she turned around, her mother was standing there in casual clothes. She looked somehow fresh and youthful. "I'll organize Emma's room." Her mother's voice no longer had its former imperious tone. Instead, it had returned to the warm voice of a real mother. "Thank you." In the sight of her mother soothing Emma, Olivia saw a small hope. Things would never return to how they were before, but new bonds were slowly being nurtured. At night, after her mother left, Olivia stepped out onto the balcony of her new home. The full moon cast a gentle light. Emma showed a peaceful sleeping face in her crib. This was true happiness. Olivia felt it from the bottom of her heart. The following spring, the cherry blossoms in full bloom cast pale pink shadows in Central Park. Emma walked slowly at Olivia's voice. A toddling little girl turned around. At 1.5 years, Emma was energetically running around the park paths. "Oh, Olivia," her mother, resting on a bench, waved. Helen's hair had more white in it, and her expression had softened. She had sold the Park Avenue mansion and now lived alone in a quiet residential area, a life far removed from society's glamour. But her eyes held a peaceful light. "Grandma." As Emma ran over, Helen gently embraced her granddaughter. Designer baby clothes and grand charity parties were no longer necessary. Now her only joy was watching this small life grow. "The new exhibition at the Metropolitan was wonderful," her mother said. Olivia smiled. After the success of the French Impressionist exhibition, she had been promoted to senior curator at the museum. Her salary had increased, and their new life was gradually stabilizing. "But you seem busy," her mother said. "Yes, but it's fulfilling." Emma had started daycare, and Olivia had found a new rhythm, balancing work and child care. Even in their new home, away from the luxury residential area, true happiness was blooming. "Mother," Olivia carefully began. "We heard from Vanessa." Helen's expression clouded. Her second daughter, who had started a new life in Miami, had given birth to a baby boy 6 months ago. "The baby is doing well." "Yes, Vanessa seems to have finally learned how hard parenting is." The relationship between the sisters was still in the process of healing, but they had started occasionally exchanging photos of their children, a small step but a definite change. "I heard James's verdict came through," her mother said quietly. Her ex-husband had received a suspended sentence and returned to his family home in Boston, taking responsibility for the fraudulent loans. He had disappeared from the business world. Olivia was sometimes advised to find a new father for Emma's sake, but she felt it wasn't time yet. "You know," her mother said suddenly, "I've started volunteering at the community center recently." Surprised by these unexpected words, Olivia's eyes widened. "It's a support group for single mothers. I thought maybe I could pass on something useful." An unexpected change in the former queen of society, but her expression now looked more motherly than ever before. "Mother, you taught me what real strength is." Emma was running around chasing cherry blossom petals. Mother and daughter smiled gently at her innocent figure. "The other day, at church," her mother began hesitantly, "I was introduced to a wonderful person." Olivia burst out laughing when she saw her mother's cheeks redden. "Oh, Mother, you don't mean..." "It's nothing yet. Just having tea together. It's never too late in life." Her mother's new love, the rebuilding of sisterly bonds, and her own future. Mama. Grandma. Let's go over there. Emma's voice brought them back to the present. A spring breeze blew gently through Central Park in the twilight. The sparkle of luxury chandeliers, social status, designer dresses, in the end, these were just add-ons to life. What truly mattered was something simpler and more genuine. Let's go. Olivia stood up and took her mother's hand. Emma laughed innocently. That smile was the most precious, irreplaceable radiance of all. Tomorrow, the day after, and beyond, their new life would continue moving forward, slowly but surely.